Folks who are joining us, we will get started momentarily. Right now, we have a few logistics. I just hit the live button so that it gets notified, and we can make sure other people get notified as well. So, um, and I'm going to hold off for 30 seconds, and then we will get going. Started momentarily. Right now, we have a few logistics. I just hit the live button. Okay, so with me today on the Teflon Tales, I have Rashmi Ketha, and Rashmi came through an introduction with my second guest on the Teflon Tales, Katrina Furman. Thanks, Katrina, for the introduction. Rashmi, I'm going to introduce you with your first line on your LinkedIn page, which I found to be something that I had to take a deep breath and take it in. And so it's you really talk about Rashmi, and you and I hail from India, and Rashmi means ray of sunshine. And your profile starts off with, this is what I aspire for others to be, a ray of hope and positively influence at least one new person every day. So let's start with that, right? I'm putting you on the spot over here. So how does Rashmi come up with that particular opener on your LinkedIn profile, number one, and why did you put that?
First of all, thank you so much, Ashwin, for having me on. And
Absolutely.
This is a great opportunity. And yes, to your point, this took me years to come up with. I always knew, like, when you grow up, you're always curious about what your name means, what your classmate name means. So you know the meaning of your name.
Yeah.
But to kind of connect it with the things that you do in your day-to-day life, I am I have my day job at Verizon in data science. I'm an entrepreneur on the side, mentor, and Toastmaster, public speaker. So all of these, combining everything, I sat down one day or throughout the course of a few days, and I was like, what combines all of these? Who is actually Rashmi? People see Rashmi through different uh, frames or paradigms.
Yep.
So through different phrases, right? So to one person, I can be a Toastmaster, to another person, a colleague. So I sat down and I was like, I need to combine all of this into one phrase. And I was like, why don't I just use my name for that? Ray of sunshine, but that sounds it doesn't have a concrete meaning to it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, let's bring it down. What does ray of sunshine actually mean? To someone, it could be that ray of hope. To me personally, through every single thing that I do, if I can influence one person, whether it be new or an old friend, anyone in the world, if I can influence at least one person every single day, that my goal is set.
And so Rashmi, looking at the comments over here, I see Prince Sevani is already.
Yeah.
I'm going to highlight that for others. So, and the idea over here is, and this is important. While some people get caught up with the fact that, hey, it's an ego boosting thing, or so on and so forth. For me, exactly like you, is have you positively impact another human being so they can go through their own life, through their own failures and their evolution, right? So you quickly mentioned a few things over here, which I think even doing one thing can be a lot for a lot of people, right? So again, I'm going to just read out, right? So senior technical analyst at AI Insights at Verizon, leadership development program founder of Verizon Data Warriors, co-founder and chief strategy and analytics officer at Jewel Book. Let's come back to that in a bit. And Toastmasters international NJ director. How do you end up doing so many things? And talk through the journey of discovering how many things you had to attempt to actually get down, say, oh, I can do these 4 or 5 things. So how does somebody go through that discovery process of figuring out what they're not good at? Again, going back to the Teflon analogy, it is you need to have a lot of pans turned on, right, to be able to know what's working, what's not working. So talk a little bit about how did you even get to this point of saying, hey, I'm doing these 4 things, and that's a lot, right?
It's a lot, and it can definitely burn someone out if you're not careful. And so it's a lot of different questions that you ask. So let me take it step by step, saying that it takes a lot of experimentation. And to be honest, I'm still experimenting. If you asked me to do this LinkedIn Live 2 years ago, I would have said no, straight up no. I am.
Hey, if you asked me to host a LinkedIn Live a month ago, I would have said, "Who, me? No, right?" So we're on the same boat.
Exactly. So you're experimenting with this series, and I'm experimenting with one aspect of my life, which is public speaking, communication. And that's when I decided to join Toastmasters 2 years ago. And I joined as a user, as a person to learn, and then I quickly became very involved in it, made a lot of speeches, grew, took feedback, and grew on top of that feedback. And then I'm up to a point where now I can mentor someone else. And if you look back 2 years ago, I would have never seen myself at this stage where, like, who, me, Rashmi, mentoring someone else in public speaking, first of all. I can mentor maybe in the subjects that I learned in school or like college or at work, but in public speaking, I don't think so. So that is something that just take a look at what are you struggling with? Yours and mine probably are the same, where it might be video conferencing. We can talk maybe on the phone and record our voices, but for me, coming up live, first of all, and on video, it's a lot.
So just double clicking on that, right? And you said you started this about 2 years ago as a participant, and then very quickly grew. So again, going back to Teflon, so how do you get over that inner critic? How do you get over that? My last guest, Michael Tonert, and I were talking about this towards the end, which is the world looks at you a certain way, and some of them look at your title and say, "Hey, that's who you are, Rashmi," right? And how can you do this thing which has nothing to do with your work? So again, I'm just kind of giving an example of how do you get over the inner self-critic? How do you get over what these societal expectations are to be able to continue moving forward and moving forward quickly?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just reading the comments on the side as you're talking. So Prince, I know you said being aware of what you don't know is a great edge to have in the first place. So that's always step one. Maybe stop talking to all other people. Maybe a few years ago, a lot of my friends did that social media cleanse where they would be going off of all social media, whether it be LinkedIn, Snapchat, maybe Facebook, Instagram, and they would take a step back and discover themselves. Be like, what am I good at? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And what am I scared of within those weaknesses? So that's step one. And then step two is once you identify those, how do you get past it? I'm just going to stick to Toastmasters since we're on that example. When I was looking at different Toastmasters clubs to join, I went to a few before picking my club. And I mentioned that because it's very hard to find that supportive community.
Yeah.
All Toastmasters have the same goal, is to help new members and aspiring people with their communication goals. But to find that correct group of people whom you click with and they click with you, it takes experimentation. It took me almost 2-3 months. I went around 4 or 5 different clubs around my house. And I was like, I just want to sit in one of their meetings and see how I feel. And then finally one clicked, and that soared from there.
So again, you mentioned something that I think, and I put myself in that category of I need to do something. So I would have gone to the first one and either glass half full or glass half empty, and then stuck to it. But you did something amazing, which is, again, we talked about this briefly before we hit record, which is the whole concept of artificial intelligence, right? And again, this is not a tech conversation, but I'm using that because everything is the success of any AI model is based on the amount of data it can collect, right? And so to get over prejudices, to get over corner cases, to just ensure that the model is effective. And what you're talking about over here is doing the same thing to a human intelligence, which is, yes, you need to, and you had your end goal set, but you did not hurry up the initial process of say, hey, I'm going to go to the first one, and if I like it, I'm going to stay. If it sucks, I'm out of there, right? So, and that's a really important point of being able to go to a few clubs and understanding where there is. So again, for listeners and viewers, I think that's a great piece of advice, right? If you're looking to experiment something new, whether it's art, music, writing, speaking, give it a few tries before you've come to a decision of whether this is something for you or not, right? Okay, switching gears a little bit. I know this is another thing that you've been doing, which is the founder of the Verizon Data Warriors organization. And again, I'm going to ask you the question that people, I know, again, myself included, struggle with, which is when you're in a large company, you are straight-jacketed, right? For better or for worse, right? People
Yeah.
expect you to be doing X. And here you are in one of the largest organizations on the planet doing a variety of different things. How did that come about, and how do you keep that going? And again, past guest Katrina Furman, who's also your colleague and who does
Yeah.
amazing things. So there are more than obviously there are examples of this. So talk a little bit about how did you end up giving yourself the permission to experiment and continue doing that.
Yeah, definitely. And I see one of my colleagues, Deepthi, joined.
Welcome, Deepthi.
She's also in my data warrior clan that I call it. So just to answer your question, it definitely comes from the opportunity that Verizon actually has given me. I did not join Verizon just straight out of college as a new hire in one position. I joined what's called their leadership development program, which is a rotational program for IT, and especially the track that I chose, which is data science. It's a 3-year rotational program where I rotate between 3 different teams, 1 year each. And that's a lot of companies are doing this, but as far as I know, just that aspect and the different perspectives that you can see, even within the 1 year, 2 year, 3 years that you get at work, that encouraged me to try out new things. I would be working on a data science project. In my first year, I did something related to customer and marketing analytics. My second year, I did fraud analytics. So that's working with like financial data, still same working with customers.
Yep.
And then my third year, which is currently going on, I'm looking into how to oversee the whole data science platform and the workflow. So bringing all of the pieces together. So just having different perspectives about the same subject that kickstarted my interest in trying new things. And I know when I first joined Verizon my first year, there wasn't a set group of, there's a global organization called Women in Data Science. There's a conference that happens at Stanford every single year. And then you can be a regional ambassador for that. So I was like, okay, we all can't travel to Stanford every single year. So why don't I bring that event to Basking Ridge in New Jersey at Verizon? So I was like, okay, I hosted an event. First year went great. A lot of people got the awareness. A lot of people came out saying that I had questions. I want to get started in data science or just working with data to begin with, but I didn't know how until now. So that, you can go ahead, but that like motivated me to do more events and bring up awareness. And eventually that turned into data warriors. So it's not just data science, but everyone in data.
Yeah. So Rashmi, I mean, I had to hold myself because you said something which I think is something we were discussing before we went live, and that is what I call the silent majority. And you and I are talking about this. I'm going to be very brief about this, but the reason I'm going to talk about it is because you just hit upon something which I posted about less than a day ago. And the whole idea was I was kind of conjuring up this conference, if you can remember what a conference looks like right now. So you go up there are speakers, there are panelists, and at the end of it, typically, given if there's time, they say, hey, audience, anybody has any questions, right? And remember that uncomfortable silence when audience members looking at each other saying, hey, who's going to go up there first? And so the analogy I was trying to draw was the majority of the people in the audience will sit in their seats. They will not go up to the mic because it's uncomfortable. Yet, let's be honest and say, hey, majority of them have derived value listening to Rashmi speak. On the virtual stage, again, it's like, hey, we have this whole social permission to, hey, anybody can post anything, which is great. But then now we get caught up into this spiral of how many likes, how many comments, how many shares, right?
Yeah.
So, and this whole thing kind of hit me, and I said, you know what? It's not about that, right? And the reason I know that because I post very regularly on LinkedIn, and some of them have deathly silent, some of them have reasonable uptake. But the point is, even the ones that have not been commented or shared upon, I usually get somebody reaching out to me offline.
Yeah.
Either over email or a LinkedIn message, even saying, hey, this really resonated. And the funny part was that this particular post, actually somebody who we're not directly connected with, he talked about a post I did 9 months ago. and about a company called Chewy.com, and how so we had lost our rescue dog about a year ago, and I had canceled the auto shipment from Chewy.com by saying, "Hey, stop doing that because we don't have a dog anymore." And they actually sent me a bouquet of flowers 2 weeks later. And this is a large company. I'm a no-name customer. I probably won't even be a repeat customer to them because the grieving process is pretty long for dog owners. And I posted about this 9 months ago, and here's this guy talking about it publicly to the post where I was talking about the silent majority. And it's essentially was that he was a silent majority and he had not responded to one of my posts. And here was something that resonated with him 9 months ago. And he was saying, "Hey, this is what really impacted me because it talks about customer connections." And
Yeah.
the reason I bring this up is because what you talked about over here, which is people didn't know where to go to. And you got the information, but it wasn't for Rashmi alone. It was actually to help the community. And
Yeah.
these people who otherwise wouldn't have got the opportunity, right? So again, one of those things that I think we sometimes gloss over. So tell me how that fueled you to do, like you talk about people giving themselves permission, but in
Yeah.
your case, again, you were giving yourself permission, but also you had built this community where anybody who comes up to you and says, "Hey, that really impacted me," gives you further wings to fly, right?
Yeah. And I'll tell you a story about my first time, like the first time that has happened to me, and kind of kickstarted my whole LinkedIn, that whole like fire that's burning until now too. Is I used to, when I was in college, I switched, not switched majors, but I wasn't always a computer science or like in data to begin with. So I did a little bit of business, marketing, and then did when I was in my master's doing data science, like core courses, I was learning the programming language called R.
Mhm.
And it was super tough for me. And what I did was I learned it, I learned the concepts, and then I made max like 5 to 8 minute YouTube videos on what I learned, what taught me, or what am I actually doing in class. So, but the videos weren't long at all, like less than 10 minutes. And I posted that. Didn't get much traction. I would see a few views or like likes, and I didn't care about it. And I was like, this will help someone,
Yeah.
some struggling college student like across the world who doesn't have to bang their head against
Yeah.
the desk learning R. Maybe this will help them. So I'm like, okay, let me just put out the content. And I kid you not, 2 years later, I started working at Verizon. I'm like learning R, Python. So I'm like learning all of these things. And a college student, you can see it on one of my YouTube video comments. They were like, "You have no idea how much this helped me." And I'm like, I forgot I even made this
Yeah.
video. I'm like, how did you even find this? And that is like the eternal fuel that you
Yeah.
can give. And that's where connecting it back to my first line on the LinkedIn
Yeah.
about you thing, that's where that comes from, where I want to inspire at least one new person or one person every single day. I don't have to know who that person is, but as long as someone is benefiting from whatever I put up online, that's it. That's all I need.
Yeah, and it's also so important something that you mentioned, which is the creation and the impact, and somebody actually putting it to use in their life. These could be spaced apart,
Yeah.
months, days, years, even, right? So again, sometimes we get caught up in this. Okay, the LinkedIn algorithm, the first hour, if I don't get 10 likes, I mean, uh, let's assume that, I mean, you're a programmer. I can like, claim to be a programmer 30 years ago, right? But you can't, I mean, don't, let's not get wound up about outthinking the algorithm, right? And like you said, there needs to be a bigger purpose. And to your point, which I completely empathize and do it myself, which is like, are you impacting one life, right? And then everything else, it's like, hey, it might be like you said, your YouTube video shows up and impacts one person, and he or she would probably have gone through uh, years and the struggles that
Yeah.
you did, right? And so so let's get to something which I know is near and dear to your heart, and it's I know it's something that is very close to you, and yet you've been able to distance yourself. Let's talk about Jewel Book, and really, what is it? How did it start? And walk through the journey of where you are right now. And I'm sure there are learnings for others to get also from that.
Yeah, definitely. And like it said, like the hardest battles are something that is with something that is very close to your heart. So with Jewel Book is my like entrepreneurial venture. I wouldn't say it's my only one. I still have yet to many things to experiment with, but it's
Sure.
definitely was my first one where I was trying out and be like, hey, I want to build something from ground up. So when you go out, talk to other people, you don't become an entrepreneur because you want to build off with an idea. You become an entrepreneur because you want to solve problems.
Yep.
And that's once you start solving problems, especially ones that you know hurt other people, that's when you emotionally connect with that mission, with that vision, and then you start building things from ground up. So, and to come back to your point, it's been going on, still part of the core team, but to take a step back, this was ongoing with my day job, which is picking up. I was transitioning from second to third rotation, doing a lot more things with Toastmasters, with the Data Warriors. So a lot of different burners in our Teflon language.
Yeah.
So a lot of different burners, and one of them had to go on low, on SIM. And then I chose Jewel Book to be that. I'm like, I'm still part of the mission, and it's like passing the baton to the team over there. Be like, I brought it up to a point where now I can take a step back and watch it grow from a distance, and that it's not easy at all. And we've talked about this, where it's to take a step back and to see that, like Prince, you're on fire. So Prince is on fire, just in the comments.
I've got to post this because this is one of my favorite quotes of all time. In fact, I have it right up to the wall. Yeah. So, and I think this is emblematic of the life that you live, right? Which is and again, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to bring this up, which is the idea of stepping back is one thing, right? But the other piece of it is also you mentioned this early on, which is you have to be kind to yourself and how to assess. And you went through it very quickly, but talk through the process of self-assessment to know which one can you actually be effective at today and which one somebody else can actually run with it, and you can kind of, like you said, turn it down to sim. And that's a incredibly hard thing to do, because you're actually putting your mirror to yourself, but you're also kind of like stepping outside your body, if you will, right? And looking at saying, hey, Rashmi X, Rashmi Y, Rashmi Z, and so did you have mentors through that? Were you working with somebody else, or was it all kind of you looking inwards and making those decisions?
Yeah, I have a mentor, and I knew her from Verizon, and she went to another company. But like she and I have been talking about this for quite a while, and then I was like, it's getting really overwhelming, but at the same time, I'm very, very connected to this mission. So what is the best transition to still be connected to it, but not be burnt out? So we were talking, what I do every single year is my version of a vision board. But I draw like a star diagram, and I look at 5 aspects of my life. Number 1 is definitely work that is related to my day job. Number 2 is work that is not related to my day job. So it can be your side business, your venture, any hobbies or like learnings that you want to do. 3 would be your personal goals. What are you? That would actually be hobbies, would be in there. Are you investing in the stock market? Like, learn something new about there. 4 would be mental health and spiritual health, and 5 would be family, friends, the social aspect of your life. So every like November, December, that's pre New Year's resolution, I sit down, look at all of these 5 aspects of my life and be like, what can I concentrate on, or what has given me the best input or feedback for this year? Can I build on that, or is it time to focus on another aspect of my life? This year, maybe I haven't been focusing a lot on my mental health or my spiritual health. That could be a step for next year, or even the next month, saying that you need to start meditating 5 more minutes every single day. So that's breaking that bigger goal into more concrete goals that I could hopefully just put them into practice.
Wow. And it sounds so important, right? And I keep thinking about, hey, you have these public companies doing quarterly business reviews or offsites where we talk about strategy. But this is your strategy, right? This is like who you are. What, like you said, hey, I had these 5 goals and I did not hit the mental health, spiritual, and family goal, and I hit these other three. And it seems so logical to do, and yet we go on for years doing the same thing.
Oh
uh,
yeah.
yeah, bad mouthing colleagues and bad mouthing a job and boss and all the other things. So again, I think that's a annual, I think Prince say annual me summit, right?
And
I
you'll
mean,
meet from it.
you're absolutely right, which is and I think that aspect of saying, hey, it's putting yourself in on that X-ray machine, if you will, and say, hey,
Yeah.
I expected this to happen, and why happened, right? So again, using this, I think that's wonderful. And I think this leads into the last question, which is one of the things that you do is also really kind of be a spokesperson for your generation. I'm just going to generalize Gen Z. And the amount of maturity and the amount of courage and the amount of initiatives you are showing. Talk a little bit about, and again, I'm just broad brushing over here, is across generations and looking at Gen Z in particular, there is I'd say there's a biased view or not, I don't know, which is there is the ROI needs to be very quick,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
So, and
you you have me. You do this every single LinkedIn live, even with Michael. You pick
uh,
something that lasts 5 minutes and fire up the person.
hey,
Now we can't stop talking.
okay. So talk a little bit about that, because it's something that I know is in top of mind for a lot of people, right? And again,
Yes.
this spans across families, spans across companies, but even among groups, which is how did you overcome that? Because you are playing the long game, right?
Yeah.
And how did you get over the fact that, hey, whether it's a YouTube video like we talked about years later, or the investment that you're putting in to help others, again, the ROI for which cannot be calculated, and yet, and this is the part that amazes me, is you are putting business metrics on yourself, right? So you are being extremely focused on ensuring that has Rashmi met her goal or not, but at the same time realizing that things will. So yeah, again, I know you're fired up, so just go ahead.
No, no. And I think this is the one of my biggest books that changed my aspect and my perspective on life is Range by David Epstein. And
Okay.
and everyone in my like friend group know, like I talk about this almost every single week to everyone that I know about. And this is something that I would like to use this platform to mention as well. And you brought in the perfect time to do so. What Range talks about is doing different things, the difference between someone who specializes very early in their lives,
Mhm.
why it's good for the short term, but not really for the long term. And it talks about the advantage of generalists, people who
Mhm.
experiment early in their lives. Both are good. Both
Mhm.
will give you phenomenal benefits, phenomenal ROI, like you said. But one is for short term and one is for long term. And there's a saying that we all know where it's jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
But there's often a second half to that that we miss. Jack of all trades, master of none, dot, 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 but oftentimes better than master of one. And
Wow.
and that hits home every single time. I revisit this book so many times throughout the year, and I look back at it, and sometimes, and this happens because for Gen Z, millennial, whatever generation you are, if you compare yourself to others and you see another person, most of the time, if they're succeeding in the short term or early on in their life, this doesn't apply to everyone.
Mhm.
But most of the time, you'll see that they probably specialized in something, whether
Yeah.
it be they've been doing computer science like their whole entire life, or like becoming a chess master but they've started learning only chess from when they were 4 years old. So, and then there will be other people where you just don't know. You want to experiment, you want to learn what we're doing. I'm learning different things. I want to learn more and more in things. But sometimes it feels like maybe I'm falling behind. Maybe it doesn't seem that like it's not a flowery life. For someone who has that short-term benefit, all eyes are on them, all our cameras are pointed towards them. But for someone who is experimenting at the same age, in the same age group, I would just say keep going. And that's the path that I think you and I are on too, that we're experimenting a lot. And that's what Teflon, that different burners for Teflon does, is just keep going. The advantage of generalists is a lot higher than being a specialist. None of them are bad.
Yeah.
But me personally, that book has impacted me just to look at life in that different perspective, where it's like, don't feel like you're falling behind just because you're not as popular, or like you said, it goes back like the LinkedIn post or any post that you put up there. If you don't get the first 10 likes within the first hour, that doesn't mean that post is bad. It just has a different type of content that will click, whether if it's a week, month, year from now on.
No, very, very important. I think the part that you mentioned about being able to not look for short-term ROIs, but the part about the generalist also, again, in closing, is whether we like it or not, you can't have a conversation without talking about the pandemic, right?
Yes.
And one of the things I think it has hit home across the planet universally is, to your point, you could be an expert at one thing, but if that business never returns, right? You can pick the business of your choice. I don't want to name names of here because I know it does hit home very close, is being able to repurpose yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this goes back to something I did many, many years ago. And it was just, the analogy in my head was at that point is, yeah, I'm going to learn swimming, right? But the analogy was, you can't learn swimming when you're drowning. Right. So that aspect of it, to your point about being consistent, being able to put that discipline in, saying it's going to pay off at some point, right? And even if you learn swimming and you never get to go to the swimming pool, I think it has taught you lots of other qualities that sometimes is going to pay dividends in other
exactly.
parts of your life.
And you don't always have to know what they are.
Exactly.
You'll feel the benefits no more than like knowing about the benefits.
Right. Exactly. So again, a fascinating conversation. So first off, it's what 6:05 for me, so it's not super late. I know it's 9 where you are. So and again, you're the fourth guest in the Eastern time zone. So and I thank you for again taking the time, joining me over here. And obviously, you have a massive following, as I can see from the conversations.
But I see, a lot of people.
It's happy to see that you're making a positive impact. But again, I'm inspired, right? I think what you are doing is cross generational. I think this is definitely impacting not just the Gen Zs, millennials, but Gen X, Gen Ys, baby boomers, and so on and so forth, right? So I applaud you for that. And again, I'm going to keep following you. And so people who are viewing this after the live show ends, this is obviously going to be available on LinkedIn. So feel free to connect with Rashmi, feel free to connect with me, and hopefully this has given you some food for thought on how you want to evolve yourself as well. Thanks, Rashmi.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ashwin, and thank you so much for tonight, and great job with Teflon Tales. Looking forward to watching all of the future episodes coming up.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.